Howdy, everybody. Bob Tallman here. Kendra Santos has been the most trusted storyteller and truth teller now for generations of cowboys and cowgirls. Tommy Joe Lucia has worked and learned the rodeo business from every angle for the last 51 years. Listen to me, people. Santos and Lucia come at their life's work from the different angles of the rodeo business, which makes for lively discussion and debate. Their voices in rodeo are respected. This is no spin rodeo. No politics, no BS. Listen up. Here we go.
Thank you, Bobby T, for the welcome and the introduction. By the way, in that open there, I was just listening. If you heard that I've been in this business 51 years, that's actually correct because I started performing when I was 3. So if you think that that's a voiceover mistake, which would mean I'm 54 years old, so there you all know how old I am. Good morning to Greg Teagarden in the production bay and our hot mess, Kendra Santos. How are you this morning, Kendra? You look great. You look fantastic. Because you see, here's what's interesting, everybody. I've got her speechless already this morning. This is going to be a good one. Here's what's interesting. She lives in California. I live in Texas. There's a big difference between California and Texas, not only in the cultures, but also in the time zone. So she has to get up like really early to get ready, and I don't. And so let's try this one more time. Good morning, Kendra. Have you had your big cup of joe?
2 cups of coffee, and I'm on my tea now.
Green tea?
It's green tea. It's licorice mint, and it's delightful.
It's delightful. Okay. Okay, well, we always kick off No Spin Rodeo. Thank you, No Spinners, for listening to us. This is where Kendra catches us up on the latest news in the Western lifestyle world. Take it away.
Well, obviously, the PRCA's regular season is over. I just returned to my desk from a 2-week road trip that started at Isaac Diaz's place in Desdemona, Texas, and ended at the WCRA's $400,000 Rodeo Carolina in Mill Spring, North Carolina. I'll get back to Isaac in a minute, but I guess I would open here with the money at this event, and it might not count toward the world standings, but it counts in your bank account. And also cool to me is that in a lot of cases at this rodeo, the big money was won by underdogs, and they never would have been picked on paper, but they came through. And that is something that is cool to me about the WCRA. Like kids, you have to be 18 to get your PRCA or WCRA card now, but there are teenagers at these events. It's not only preparing them for bigger stages to come later, but some of them are rising to the occasion now. So it's pretty fun to watch, and you won't see it anywhere else where they collide like that. Well, yes, at the American, this happens also. So in the bareback riding, Mason Clements and Leighton Berry split the win, which was not a surprise. But Mason won $16,750. Leighton $13,250. That's not chump change. That's real money. So I will mention the other winners because some of them you've never heard of, and I hadn't either. But Marcus Terrio and Cole Curry, they just made their first NFR. They won $16,850 a man in the team roping. Tori Johnson, steer wrestler from Oklahoma, won the bulldogging. Stephanie Fryer won the barrel race. Trevor Hale won the tie down. Maylee Wade won the breakaway. Wyatt Rogers in the bull riding, and Clay Galliard ended up beating the favorite Isaac Diaz in the bronc riding. That a young breakaway roper I've never heard of won almost 26 grand. That's cool. So I'll say this. To me, I look at the WCRA as like, it's like bonus money. It's money that fell from the sky for rodeo contestants, and more money for rodeo contestants. That's what I'm all about. But in the 5 years that the WCRA has been around, they have paid cowboys and cowgirls $16,500,000. That's good news to me. I don't see a downside to that.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah, I think it's great, Kendra.
I
I think it'd be interesting to know how much of the 16.5, and I think it's sizable, by the way, is added money and how much is recirculating money. Um, but listen, I think that anybody in that wants to come into rodeo and put on professional events that makes the rodeo property look good, excuse me, that makes a rodeo property look good and pays great money that allows people to continue to go, does it at beautiful facilities. I saw some of the stuff of that facility looked gorgeous, a unique place to play. Hats off to all the folks at the WCRA, good staff over there, good event. Now, I heard some grumblings about, and I have zero proof of any of this, but that potentially, Isaac was riding for $1 million. You win 3 in a row. In case some of our viewers don't know, if you win 3 titles at 3 of their events in a row, you win $1 million. It's the Triple Crown, a concept, by the way, that was discussed between Days of 47, Calgary, a lot of different people in the past that the WCRA grabbed a hold of and is doing. Now, I did hear, Kendra, that there was some grumblings. I don't know if there were some rule changes on Isaac actually winning $1 million if he won the event or having to share it. Any grumblings I don't know where that originated, but that's not good. I mean, I don't know if any rules were adjusted or anything. I don't know that. But the way I understood it, if he won $1 million. Is that the case?
So the rules were not changed. The Triple Crown of Rodeo, which is sponsored by the Lazy Arena in Guthrie, Oklahoma, win three consecutive majors, WCRA majors, and $1 million is on the line, the Triple Crown of Rodeo. It has said all along, because I've written about it a number of times, to any athlete or athletes, there's always an S in parentheses on athletes to win 3 straight. I think the confusion perhaps came when the last couple of years it fell into a calendar year. That made it easier to understand. And the last couple of years it ended in Fort Worth at Cowtown Christmas in December. This year this run for the Triple Crown finishes up at the Lazy E Arena the first week of January. I think that maybe led to some confusion, but the athletes knew. Isaac was well aware. And so going into Sunday's Triple Crown of Rodeo round, there were 4 ways it could have potentially been split. If Mason Clements wins the bareback riding at Rodeo Carolina, he has 2 in a row. Guess what? He tied with Leighton Berry. So now the way it's written, nothing was changed. It's not 1 in a row. It's not for Leighton. It's not 2 in a row for Mason. You have to win it outright to count. So we go back to ground zero on the bareback riding. Okay. The other, Kelsey Domer in the breakaway had a chance to make it 2 in a row. Shad Mayfield in the tie down had a chance to make it 2 in a row. And the Riley Kittle and Jace Helton in the team repping. So there were so many ways if Isaac wins that he would have had to wait until January to see how many ways it would get split, if at all. But the way it played out, someone I don't know, Clay Galliard, he was 86 points, Isaac was 81. To me, the outcome was legit. When Isaac's feet hit the ground, he knew it. My understanding, when they did the stock draft, Isaac was debating in his own mind. He had first pick, and he was debating between the horse that Clay picked, and he had first choice, and he picked the other one. And it's, that's rodeo. On that particular day, the horse Clay picked had a better day. Isaac did everything. Isaac was flawless. He won the first 2 rounds. I mean, he was on point. And I've always respected and really liked Isaac Diaz. What's not to like? He's a great guy. He's a family man. He's a great friend to people. You're never going to hear him brag. It was so easy to cheer for this guy. And after going before this event to his home with his NFR barrel racer wife, Brittany, who's a barrel horse trainer, their 2 little kids are adorable. Hey, RC Landingham proved last December this actually happens. RC Landingham is home hurt again. He's just had another surgery again. But guess what? Because of this Triple Crown of Rodeo, he has a new place that's his own. and a lot less stress than he had a year ago. But the way, it's easy to be a gracious winner. When it was over, there was Isaac, with his little girl and his little boy, Whitley and Reese, holding them, and he was so gracious in defeat, and so I'm a Isaac Diaz fan for life, and the whole concept, the whole way it all played out, there was a tick of drama with Shad Mayfield. When we're talking about rules, he was not aware. I wasn't previously either, but Saturday night he curled a tail on his calf, and it came off. And he was masterful. He finished the run, beautifully executed, like would come in so handy if, say, he's winning the NFR average in the 9th round and he curls a tail. Like the way he recovered was awesome. But come to find out, a bell collar catch only in the calf roping, not catch as catch can, like as is in the case in the PRCA. So there's other things that are different. 5-second barriers in the WCRA, calves only have to stay tied 3 seconds. There's some different things, but those rules were set. They were not, changed in the heat of battle or whatever. So the other thing I would say before we, get out of town here on what just happened in Mill Spring, North Carolina, is that the WCRA also paid out the Reliance Ranch's virtual rodeo qualifier points champion checks. So Cody Devers, Josh Frost, Ryan Padone, Martha Angeloni, Shad Mayfield, Andrew Ward, Buddy Hawkins, Isaac Diaz, and Leighton Perry. Guess what? At the end of the rodeo, they were each given a $25,000 bonus for being the points leader. So like Leighton Berry left Rodeo Carolina with over 38 grand. That's pretty cool. That's real money.
That's fantastic. It's great. I mean, it irritates me a little bit that when good things happen in rodeo, people seem to take sides and, there becomes controversy and chips on shoulders and people start to become defensive, and that's silly. Now, it is interesting. I watched Isaac's ride. I watched that part, of course, and I thought, man, that horse. But that's one of the benefits of those guys picking their animals, right? That it's not necessarily the luck of the draw. And when we had the WCRA in Salt Lake, they picked their animals. I think that adds, all of these things that the WCRA is doing, they're adding stories and they are making history. Riley Webb, he roped for $1 million at our event. And again, now they've had 2 really gracious, I think, people that didn't, I can't imagine the pressure, nor there's got to be some kind of a sick feeling of, man, and both of them were fantastically gracious. I think it's fantastic. It is good for rodeo. I would love to see more of these high profile events start to continue to have conversations so that this doesn't turn into golf where you've got to live in a PGA Tour. I continue to promote that we should all continue to have conversation to work together. But no doubt, hats off to that event. Hats off to the money, Gary McKinney, all those people that are, all of the WCRA staff that are making checkbooks more full in rodeo with good, clean, produced competition. So hats off. Congratulations to those guys and all the winners. Absolutely, Kendra. Now we typically talk about our no spinners. I'm kind of disappointed, I have to be honest, Kendra, because I hope that our no spinners out there, those are the people that listen to this podcast a lot. We have a feedback line where you can text and we don't know who you are. That number is 817-668-2395. And I kind of challenge them to send us a text on who they thought was the GOAT of rodeo in from what they can remember. Who do they think is the best in this game? And we did get one back that reinforced Cody Ohl and Fred Whitfield and also brought up Adriano Marias as kind of changing the landscape in bull riding, which I would agree with. Adriano won, and this no spinner mentioned it. He won even in a transition of generations, right? He won, but you can look back at all of there's a lot of greats out there. And I guess if I was going to challenge the no spinners, then I'm going to have to pick. Now, listen, this is opinion. This is my narrative, Kendra, because it's probably going to irritate you. But who the greatest of all time is sports talk, sports talk. And is it LeBron and is it Michael Jordan? Is it, that's just good, fun conversation. Nothing, there are greats that probably were greats and we didn't even know it. However, I'm going to have to pick Trevor for mine. And there's a couple reasons.
Way to go out on a limb.
Well, okay. But let me, taking away his credits, which you can't do, all of the great things he did in the sport, his character is impressive to me. Now, Adriano's character is impressive to me. But, he just, the level of preparing and determination and skill, okay, you're right. So it's easy to pick Trevor, but I really would, and it would probably be for more reasons than Buckles. That's my point. And same thing with Michael Jordan. I think Michael Jordan, to me, his character feels more likened to what I would like than LeBron. That's all I got to say. Do you have a GOAT?
Well, I've always said that I feel like it's really difficult to compare generations. It's like, okay, just take the calf roping. That's always debated. But it's like, how do you compare what Dean Oliver did on the monster calves they used to run over monster score lines when they stepped off the left and legged them because they were beasts? How do you compare that to Fred Whitfield, Joe Beaver, Cody Ohl, Trevor Brazile? Like, how do you compare trying to be 6 in the Thomas and Mack? It's really difficult to compare. Now, when you look at the full package, obviously no one's ever going to argue with you about, Trevor Brazile. 26 gold buckles, but he's also like the man, the husband, the dad, the friend. Like, find a fault in Trevor Brazile. Go ahead, try, because
occasionally he can be He's been really mean to me before. Yeah, he has been mean to me.
It was probably warranted. It was if Trevor said something. So
Trevor hurt my feelings a couple of times, Kendra.
With the truth. When the truth hurts, it's on you.
Here we go.
Moving on.
I don't even recall. Okay. But it's hard to hurt my feelings, and Trevor did intimidate me a couple times. Something to think about is in football, for instance, Kendra, they had the stats are still in for who won the Super Bowls, but the way they played football back then was different than the way they play football now. And it's that way in all the sports, but you still have to keep records, and you still have to that's the beauty of this, right? Is that we have the ability to figure out who we think's the best. And I think it's really what generation we're in our prime, right? We're in on our prime. We're the most engaged. Greg, what do you think? Do you pick sports heroes as GOATs that were before you were really engaged in sports? Or are you more likely to do it now?
For me, it's more of when I grew up and got interested in the sport. That would be my GOAT. It's really hard for me now to say somebody currently that would be a GOAT in any sport. When it comes to rodeo, I think the interesting part is the fact that there's so many different events. So, you could say Adriano is the best bull rider, but that's only for bull riding. You can have Trevor Brazile for the roping. So I really feel that to pick one person for a rodeo is kind of hard because there's just so much diversity.
I think it's impossible. Yeah, and it's just like Ty Murray owned his era. That's a different end of the arena. When you talk about bull riders, it's like, who's the greatest? Is it Donnie Gay because he has the most gold buckles? Is it JB Mooney because he won $7.5 million, the most money? Is it Jim Sharp going, Adriano Moraes going 10 for 10? Who was the last one? Norman Curry, 10 for 10 at the NFR, Jim Sharp being the only criticism ever heard of Jim Sharp was that he made it look too easy and, decreased the bowl score sometimes by doing that. How do you compare, or are you going to look at the big picture and go, okay, what about them outside of the arena,
Yeah, I agree.
Are they worthy heroes to our next generations? Is that part of the conversation? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you look at Stetson, man, he's exciting. He just is. Everybody knows it. He's fun. Watch out. I mean, he's just fun. But yeah, all good points. And I think what I come to is that everybody has their own kind of goat in their mind in all sports, and there's different factors. No doubt rodeo is harder. So there we go. Now we're on to point of view, which is where we bring up conversations that Kendra and I kind of go over, and we like to keep it pertinent. We've got a lot of great point of views to talk about in the future, but some of those can happen when that maybe they're not quite as timely. And the most timely thing in our world right now, for all of you that maybe aren't as engaged in rodeo, is that the Super Bowl of rodeo, the NFR, happens in Las Vegas, Nevada, in December, and it's where you win all the money. Okay, it's the Super Bowl too. It's where you win the buckle. It's a fantastic, amazing event, no doubt about it. However, the September 30th or the end of September is they use money, right? Total winnings to decide who, from the athlete's perspective, gets to get into the NFR. And so, in theory, the top 15 highest money earners are qualified to go try to win a lot of money at the NFR and a gold buckle. So it's a very dominant storyline. It's got to be dominant in in every decision-making thing that they do. And it seems like, so that the topic of point of view is the crap that happens after the 30th. And what I mean by that is there's always some drama. Okay, and it's usually in three major areas. And the first one that I want to bring up, and then we'll talk to Kendra about it, is, the top 15. And it seems like in the past, was it last year that they had, was it 16 bull riders that got to compete at the NFR? Is that right? Can you guys fact check me on that?
Yes, that's correct.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. To me, that's a big wow. And currently there's discussions, and what we do here is I'm going to tell you the facts that I found from my sources. There's some discussions and a little bit of drama in the 15th position in healing between Tyler Worley and Colby Payne. And so here's what I've found from my sources on this. And then Kendra, I'm going to open it up to discussions. This goes back to something we've talked about in the past, and that's limits on rodeos. And there's two sides to the limits. If you guys all remember, spinners, we talked about you have to go to 40 rodeos for your money to count. That would be the light side limit. And remember, that affected Sage Kimzey. He had to go get those rodeos. Did he ride or not? Is that fair? And then you've got Casey Field, who did not get his 40 rodeos, who's made enough money and isn't going to be at the NFR. So that's the 40 rule. Well, then there's the other end of the spectrum. How many rodeos can you go to? They limit how many can count. And in the team roping, I believe, correct me, smarter people than I, but I'm pretty sure it's 75. And what sources tell me is here's how it worked. The PRCA athletes have an app. They have a portal where they can go in and look at their current rodeos and winnings and whatever's on there. I don't know. You guys all know I'm not talented enough to compete. However, the information that I have on this is that, Colby believed he was at 74 rodeos before the Governor's Cup, and he's only allowed 75. On his portal, the rodeo count total, the way I understood it, said 74. But it also has a disclaimer that says this is not audited. Above that, evidently, is the list of rodeos. Okay, how many rodeos? Because I guess they put them on there when you count them. You decide in advance. No spinners, you pick the rodeos before you compete that you want to count to the NFR. And so had he counted the rodeos, there were 75 listed, I think. This is what I'm being told. and from very credible sources. The count said 74. And so he wins 12, 13,000. I don't know the exact numbers at the Governor's Cup, which would have put him in and knocked out Tyler. So the facts are the facts. It's documented what rodeos he picked, and evidently he had picked 75 before that. And so, but, one of the things that I kind of ask my sources is, well, if this, how does this work? And so for all of you out there that don't know, so Colby they do an audit period after where they audit all the numbers and make sure everything's correct. Then there's an opportunity for athletes to present a grievance. That grievance goes to Steve Knowles first. If it's not resolved, it gets appealed. It goes to Tom Glaus. If it's not resolved, it gets appealed and it goes to an independent board of PRCA members that decide, and that's as far as it goes. That would be like the Supreme Court. So Colby can appeal this. He can appeal this to Steve Knowles. He can appeal this to Tom Glaus, and then to the board, and then it will be decided. And so those are the facts. I'll give you my opinion on this after I hear your thoughts on it, on, Colby Payne and Tyler, who's the number 15 healer into the NFR. Any thoughts, Kendra?
Well, for one, we've been down this road before in the last few decades. And I think the bottom line takeaway for me is that the PRCA, back in the day, they used to print in the Pro Rodeo Sports News with the world standings in parentheses how many rodeos you've been to. What we learned from people like Chad Masters over time is that there can be mistakes there. So I told my sons a long time ago is, bottom of it, you have to take care of your own business, and you cannot expect the PRCA to keep track of the money you've won, the rodeos you've counted, because this can all come up for audit later. You have to keep track of your own business meticulously. And here's part of, I think, what my understanding has happened here. For one thing, Clay Smith, multiple-time world champion, who's been roping with Colby this year, they did not start the season off together. Clay Smith is not going to miss the number on his rodeo count, but because they didn't rope, if they'd roped together from Odessa through Sioux Falls, I don't think this would have happened. I don't know Colby Payne. I'm sure he's a very smart individual, and this has happened to a lot of people over time. Okay, we have precedents for discrepancies like this. I did visit Tyler Worley's father-in-law is a dear friend of mine. He's a world champion and Hall of Famer, Bobby Hurley. I do know that Tyler has been, he got the email. Congratulations on qualifying. He has ordered his NFR jacket. He has ordered his NFR ring. I do not see any way Tyler Worley gets the boot here. I don't get it. I will say also, casual fans who see Colby Payne in the world standings at 17th, they have no way of knowing that this guy from 17th could potentially move up here. I also understand that, there are recordings of, Clay Smith being told, Colby's rodeo count that he still had Sioux Falls. There's all these things, but it's like, in the end, is it fair to expect a person who, to be blunt, might be a minimum wage 19-year-old? They look up, they see what they see, and they say, yeah, this is what it says. I'm not here to pick sides, but every cowboy has to have a book that has every penny, every rodeo, every turnout, every trade, everything. That's part of taking care of rodeo cowboy business. So how this is going to go, I don't know. I will also say that, I have not heard one single person say anything about 16th place, 16 teams. I mean, floodgate can of worms.
Not gonna happen.
I don't think that's going to happen, but let's not, we said that when, it's happened before in the steer wrestling, the saddle bronc riding, and the bull riding. Everybody said that's not going to happen. It happened. I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but I'm saying it's happened before. And if it were to happen, there are some odd men out here, which I think is interesting if you're a hardcore team roping fan. Like Nelson Wyatt, who's now roped with 8 or 10 people this year, he is set to rope with Jonathan Torres. These are the odd men out that would be paired off if it stands as final. So Clay Smith would rope with Tyler Worley. Jake Clay would rope with Peyton Bray. If in the unexpected event that we did go a fourth time, given the 3 other precedents to 16th, that would mean taking Brenton Hall up from 16th on the heading. And then all these guys would go back and rope with the guy that they roped with most of this year. I mean, it would change everything. So like, this is,
It's not going to happen.
okay.
It's not going to happen. It's not, I would predict that this doesn't happen. You're right. It would be, when I thought about this, I said, oh man, does that open a can of worms? And is that the easiest path forward? I think from the information that I've got, that this doesn't happen. And I would put, I think there's two blames here. One a little bigger than the other. The first one is, shame on the PRCA or any governing body that doesn't have their technology in place to do stuff correctly. That's just not acceptable when our current conversations in this world is about how do we control AI? Really? How do we control computers that think smarter than us and don't take us over? However, we can't get a spreadsheet working to do the right math. So shame on the PRCA. Come on, you're the governing body. Step it up. Get your crap right. There's no excuse for having the wrong number on a portal. That's my opinion. But the major blame, I agree with you, Ms. Santos, that the major blame of this is probably on the athlete, in that you got to take care of your own business.
And I'm not saying, shame on you to anybody at all, because trust me, everybody involved in this situation is absolutely sick. They've just roped their guts out for a year, and every single person involved here is sick to their stomachs. I am not saying, shame on so-and-so. But I mean, this is heart-wrenching.
If he had 75 rodeos in there, that's why there are rules written, right? There's policies and rules. If he nominated 75 rodeos, and if he didn't have an accurate count in his own book, like you said with your own words, there's guys out there that we talked about. These guys are business people. All of you in rodeo, all the athletes better have their own stuff written down. They need to understand routing. They need to figure out how to protect their bodies and their animals. This is a business with a lot involved that you've got to learn, by the way. Cody will tell you, this is stuff that you can't teach. It takes going down the road to make sure. I guarantee you, if this is the case, that rodeo count will be posted on his dashboard of his truck written in the future, because you wouldn't make that mistake again if that was a mistake. My point is, it is up to him to make sure he has the information. And by the way, if he's correct and they audit this, he wins, right? If the rodeo count's wrong, like there's not really any gray here. There's either amount of rodeos that were in or out, and he should have known that. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. And what people should understand is when you enter a rodeo, you enter it as either official or unofficial. And a lot of people go to a number of rodeos because you can win money and make the money, put the deposit in your bank account, and still call it unofficial. So you make one, it's an easy way to stub your toe. You thought it was unofficial. It was official. You go back to, there's audio tapes of all of this. And I promise you that people are working night and day to go back to the, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 75. Like they will get to the bottom of it, but no matter whose family dinner table you're sitting at right now, this is tough stuff.
It's tough stuff. I agree. It's not good for anybody. And I'm sure if I were good enough to be a cowboy and I said unofficial and then won, somewhere in my psyche, I might believe that I said it was official, right? I mean, that's terrible, right? To have to decide with all of the different preliminaries. But let's move on. The next thing in the NFR that usually has drama, and that is there's a process for selecting the second half to our sport. and that is the animal athletes in the rough stock events and timed events. They get to come and compete. And there's a lot of good animals out there. The way, how does that work? Who picks the animals? Well, the contractors now, kind of new, they have to provide 3 videos and submit for their animals to be selected. Now, there's some contractors that produce their own videos, like spend the money to make sure it's really, really good. And there's other stock contractors that are old school that do it on their phone or forget the last trip and run out there and record the last trip on their animal, but they got to send in 3 videos. Some contractors like it, some don't. But a list is created, and then the top athletes vote on that list. Okay. However, I don't know that a lot of people know this, but there is a committee that I shall not name because I don't know who it is, but there's a committee that actually has the final approval on that list. They look over it. They take the Cowboys' votes into account, and they look over it. And that committee has to approve the list before it's sent out of the livestock that gets to come. And this is my monologue on this. The athletes voting for it, is that good or bad? The athletes are probably going to vote for the most rideable animals. Okay? And I think that changes depending on how good you are and how able you are to ride. And I see Kendra's wheels rolling, so she's going to pounce me like a cat on a mouse. What I hear is that a lot of so there's eliminators in bull riding and in horses. And these are the animals that are really, really hard to ride and hard to look good on if you're a cowboy. Because if you take a risk and spur to the front and you do all the things, that animal might throw you off. Okay? He's an eliminator. For a bareback rider, he's heavy and so what I hear is that the bareback riders in their selections left a lot of those eliminators at home. Basically, the quote unquote eliminator pin isn't quite as tough as it's been in the past. So I asked myself, is that good? Well, I think it's good for the athletes' bodies, but here's my opinion on this. Eliminators at the NFR. And this is a whole other point of view, so I don't want to go too far on this, Kendra, but I am interested in your opinion. I've been in this for 50-something years. If you put the top 6 bareback riders on the top great rideable bareback horses, I cannot tell who won. They all rake them good. The animals kick over their head and buck. I can't tell, and I've been around this a long time. And if I can't tell, the fans in the stands really can't tell, right? Who won? And so I think if you're giving a gold buckle, there's merit to think about the fact that you should probably have a pen of horses that separate the men from the toddlers. Okay? Now, the only thing I'll throw in there, and then I'm interested to hear your point on this, is that I think it's terrible, specifically in the bareback riding, to put the eliminator pin in an early round. There's 10 rounds at the NFR. Well, jerking a guy's arm out of socket in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round that's going to affect his competition for the rest of the deal is not good. It's not good for the fans. It's not good for the athlete. So then I say, well, Tommy Joe, what would you do? Well, what if you put all the eliminators in the 10th round? The 10th round is the one. But do you only want to ride 5 horses in the 10th round? I don't have a solution to this, but I'm saying I do believe that to separate the guys that deserve the gold buckle, it can't be all horses that they love to ride and that they can all look great on. What do you think?
Well, I mean, that's a very interesting conversation. And, well, I will say this. We'll notice that there are a lot of very close scores and ties and different things like that. It seems like a good thing from the contestant's point of view if you have as even a pen as possible, right? Where it's a riding contest. They would say that in the timed events too. It's impossible to make stock exactly even because just like people, they're beings, they're, their own being. So
pick the pins. So those people that are out there that might not know, they pin them. We do it at our rodeo. They do a good job at the NFR. They try to put like animals together.
Right.
Right. So if it's there's the TV pin, and so they do that. And there's some differences between them. But I'm asking you, would you rather see, what's your favorite, a pin of eliminators or not at the NFL?
Well, I mean, of course, the eliminators are the funnest to me for the fans. That's the funnest to watch. Okay, so the thing is, are we going to car kill them, as Ty Murray used to say, in the early going? Are we going to car kill them at the end? Who's banged up? Who's going to get hauled out on a stretcher? I mean, this is not the same for the fans and the players. I do not believe, because
Absolutely.
You will be beat to shit by the 8th or 9th round. And then we're going to run in the eliminators. Holy heck. I mean, for the fans, that can be great. Or is it great if you have, these guys vying for gold buckles getting thrown on their head at the very end? I mean, I don't know. It's a very tough gray area. Huh?
I agree with that. The flip side of that, and I'm not advocating either side, because if I had a solid point on this and I had good solid facts to back my opinion on this, I would say them. But I also don't agree with lukewarm milk all the way through and figuring out who gets a buckle. Okay, in any of the disciplines, you've got to separate. You got to separate the men from the toddlers, okay? And you got to earn your stripes in this game. And I guarantee you, what Stetson can ride is a lot different than what everybody else can ride. And if you don't give him the opportunity to prove that, you're not going to give the buckle to the right guy. That's all I'm saying. Okay. And I don't know the answer.
So event directors, or are you saying that's not the case? Event directors don't still pick the stock for the NFR?
No, I'll probably be corrected. But remember who the event director's constituency is. They get elected by the riders, right? So here's the deal. There's politics in this. Like there's a lot of politics in this. Like there's politics in everything. And I don't knock that. There's politics in the world, and it's part of the game. So either play it or don't play it, but don't whine if you don't play it.
Okay, so this takes me to it. I feel it's probably similar. You're not going to get agreement among the 15 contestants in any event about which bucking horses and bulls to bring. Am I wrong? I think I'm right, because to your point, I'm pretty sure Stetson Wright is not going to deny any eliminators. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't asked him this question, but my guess is, like Ty Murray used to say, they could have run Godzilla in here. I don't care. It gets interesting, right? Is the majority going to get their way? Maybe they don't want, bulls and bucking horses in there that they can't ride. I mean, I don't blame them for that if that's the case. But you start outnumbering the titans at the very top, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And I embrace free enterprise and democracy. I do in this situation. I'm just saying that not always what's, like you said it very accurately, not always what's best for the athletes is best for the sport or the fans, right? So somewhere in between, we've always said that is probably good. I mean, like I have a question. There's a bucking horse, Sioux City Sioux. It's a Mobetta horse that won 2 rounds last year, and I noticed isn't in the NFR this year. So I did some checking to see if that horse is kind of not performing. Well, if the horse won 2 rounds in the NFR and it still is as good as it was, why isn't it in there? I don't know. So there's all this stuff going on, and it's a combination of politics and democracy and who you know. And I'm just saying that's part of the game, and the NFR will be great. It'll still be great, Kendra. You know what I'm saying? It's not like anything that we're talking about as it relates to livestock, I think is going to diminish the overall quality. I just think that to earn a buckle, you need to do just that. You need to earn a buckle.
Well, earn it. No doubt about that. And something that came up, in getting ready to talk about this subject, a Hall of Famer told me that he's 99.9% sure that for many years, every PRCA stock contractor got to take at least one head to the NFR. I do not know if this is true or not, but he said historically, there were people that every year, count on it, it would be a re-ride, but they got to take one. Now, that seems silly. when this is the best of the best stock and contestants, like, okay, we obviously did away with that. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I think you're right, but it's so subjective about what belongs. But I do think if a stock contractor is out there producing your events for you, I see merit to them getting to have it. But I mean, there's some notable contractors that don't have anything there, which just shocks me. And I think it's like we said, there's not a right answer. These stock contractors that are out there beating the road and flying the flag for PRCA rodeo, and then they don't get any rewards at the end, and maybe they don't deserve it. Maybe their horses do, but maybe they do, and they're just not really good politicians, right? And that's not fair.
There are a few areas in the ethics department that I just wonder if wouldn't have cowboy turtles rolling over in their graves. I mean,
oh, amen.
Do I understand this correctly, that some stock contractors pay the entry fees of some contestants? I mean, that feels weird.
Well, yeah. I mean, even I've often wondered, there are stock contractors that endorse, right, pay cowboys to wear patches, I think, and stuff. And you got to ask yourself if that doesn't impact things.
Well,
and again, but I'm not going to knock it. If it's allowed and it's part of the game,
yeah.
Who are we to sit there and say you shouldn't do it?
Right. But I remember the first time I worked for the PRCA way back, I didn't even notice till the Pro Rodeo Sports News came out. And on the cover was an event director, and plain as day, he had a stock contractor's sponsor patch on his shirt. And I was like, oh my God, that cannot,
that's not a good look.
That's funky. But again, I mean, if it's not against the rules, I'm never against a cowboy making money, but if you're being paid by somebody and then you're deciding how many of his horses or bulls go to the finals, that's...
Yeah, but rodeo's not the only one. You've got, now that they've opened this NIL and college athletes, there's college athletes that are deciding not to get into the NFL because they can make enough money and endorsements in college to stay there. I mean, this is the world, right? This is part of the world. Suck it up, pull up your pants, play the game or don't play the game, right? If you just can't be a politician, I'm not very good at it, then you're going to suffer some consequences.
Okay. All right. Should stock contractors know who's up when before they set their pens at rodeos? Are you kidding me? Does everybody know that that's the case?
Yeah, but I
mean, what?
But like at our rodeo, we don't release. We get a lot of heartburn, right? Because we set the pins and we don't tell anybody until right before the rodeo what they are. And we don't, our rodeo is different. I have an independent person that I hire that selects the stock, pins them, does all of that, right? Where it's normally just the stock contractor brings his own stock. And there's a lot of variance in regular rodeo, in bucking stock, even in the timed event stock. Because it's one pin that you're sorting out of. We can find a million things that in everything. You could probably find this in football, in hockey. There's a million things that there are not, Kendra, there's not simple answers to. You do the best. I just think you got to crown the right person.
Yes. That may the best man win means that, going back to the cowboy turtles who went on strike for it, a level playing field, fair competitive conditions. We do have to honor that because that's at the core of our sports integrity, right? And so we want the best man to win. I don't know that means making sure the best ones are out when the best guys are out. Is that what?
Truth. But in the end, very seldom do the greats not end up winning for all those reasons Cody Old talked about, for all those ingredients of winners that we talked about earlier. That's the reason those non-documented ingredients of winners create the GOATs of today. Okay, well, good conversation. The last one we've got a few minutes to talk about that kind of creates some drama at the NFR is the contract personnel. And for those of you that are listening, contract personnel are the people that the rodeo committees hire to help put the whole show together. They're the talent. For instance, it's the announcers, it's the music directors, it's the secretaries, it's the stock contractors at normal rodeos. But these are the people that are hired. And here's what's interesting. I can bet that there's some no spinners out there that assume that all of the contract personnel for the NFR were voted on by their peers. One would think that's the case if the livestock is voted on by its peers. However, that is not the case. And you may initially go, oh, that's BS. Well, I've got a little bit different take on that. The NFR is a rodeo, and they have a rodeo committee. All rodeos have rodeo. It happens to be the Super Bowl and the largest rodeo. But they have a rodeo committee. And in their hands, with the exception of this, these are the contract personnel that are voted on. Pickup men, bullfighters, and barrel men. Those are the three. There's a lot more. There's shoot bosses, there's general managers, there's all that. And this stuff is chosen by the NFR's committee, right? All of the other deals. Now, you may say, well, that's crap. Well, I'm a producer. I produce events. That's what I do. If I'm going to produce an event, I'm going to decide who the talent is because that represents my brand. And I want to put out the very best rodeo. So I do think, Sean Davis in the beginning and these guys, the way they've got it created where they pick who they think should be in those key contract personnel positions, I think that right should remain in that rodeo committee's hands. Hear me out, and then I'm interested in what you think, Kendra. Now, I don't agree personally all the time that they picked the best, but that's not my problem. If I wanted to pick those people, I need to go out and become the GM of the NFR, and I'm not going to do that. But I think it's right that they pick them. I think that's right. I would say that secretaries, you kind of wonder because secretaries deal with the athletes, but I think it's right that the committee picks those people. And I just want our listeners to understand that the NFRC, they pick all of them except for the pickup men, bullfighters, and barrelmen. And there's always controversy, Kendra, right, on who gets in, why'd they get picked in, is he the best announcer, is he not the best announcer? There are people out there on social media platforms shredding everybody about whether or not the best or not the best in any one of these particular things. So what say you, Kendra, to all of this?
Okay, so what I will say, you asked for my opinion, it's, of course, the bull riders and the bucking horse riders should pick the bullfighters and the pickup men. That is their safety. This is their living. That's absolutely the way it should be. As far as like contract, I know how political the announcers situation is really tough. There were, Bob Tallman and Boyd Polhamus had a stranglehold on that rodeo forever. I know the rodeo rumor mill was like, oh, you can't, keep Tallman on script or whatever. I mean, we won't even go into all that because some people think it's the worst thing that ever happened that they removed him, and, everybody has their different opinions, whatever. So, but as far as like, I do think it's fair as far as, who's going to run the timed event shoots, who's going to, be the shoot boss. I see no problem in that rodeo. That I've been in decades of the pre and post every perf production meetings, and there are people who sit there and write down how that performance goes to the second. So the well-oiled machine that is the NFR, it is our Super Bowl for a reason. No detail is left unthought of and discussed, planned. I won't get into the politics of, picking announcers or whatever. As far as like, contract personnel, maybe it's so minor when they bring in like trick riders or something. It's so, what is it? 45 seconds or something. It's not like a full act. They don't do acts at the NFR because the stars of the show are the contestants. So to me, I don't see why when it comes to contract acts that you would have the same ones every year. And I don't think they do that. I think they mix that up, don't they?
I think they do within reason. I mean, Sean Davis created an amazing, he's the mastermind of their schedules and everything. And I think Alan has done a really good job with that. And, and I think they've actually increased the entertainment value because it was all about the time frame, right? And I do understand that they want to get people out of Thomas and Mack and let them go enjoy Vegas. I like that. That's fine. However, I do think that they've had a little more flexibility on allowing it to be the Super Bowl, to be entertainment. I mean, the Super Bowl has a I don't know, 45-minute halftime show that everybody looks forward to. So I think entertainment, specialty acts, and that you say the stars of the shows are the athletes. I agree, but I don't agree that the rest of them aren't a major part of whether a fan enjoys the event or not. And so so I'm going to kind of wrap up my thoughts on all three of these, Kendra, and then kind of kick it back to you. These things aren't as simple as you might think sitting there watching the Cowboy Channel or in your home. There's a lot of things, and I'll give you an example. When I first was going to send my boys to school, my wife Donna and I were in an argument about whether homeschool or public school. And Tommy Joe said public school because I want them, as I said earlier, I want them to experience all of those things that happen in real life. I want them to figure out how to handle the bully. And by the way, the teacher that didn't like them, that's part of life.
Same.
So we agreed to do this. But what I did was I got on the school board. I'm going to try to make this quick. I got on the school board because I wanted to know what was going on and have an impact. Well, what I found out once I got on there is those school board members in that school at my particular school, they were trying to do a great job. There's a lot of things that you just can't do, right, to make the school better, right? There's all policies and there's rules, who gets to govern, and really the school board's only really thing that they can do is approve a budget and select a superintendent. My point on this is that you don't know the right answer till you get involved. And if you don't like something that's going on in our sport, you need to get involved. If you don't like what you're doing, go out there and apply for the school board. Get involved in the PRCA. Get involved in local politics because you have no right to bitch if you're not willing to act. Final comment, Kendra?
I too volunteered in my son's classrooms all those years because I wanted to, help kids. And interestingly, they ended up having me, a large part of my role for K through 6 was helping kids who didn't speak English learn English. And it was, amazing. But back to the NFR, the one thing I have had a role all these years with the contestants. I have asked more questions of the powers that be than anyone. And I feel like it's a lot of it is because the Cowboys aren't always comfortable to question something or ask why something is so. And so I have done it thousands of times where I go to the right person, whether it's the NFR committee, whether it's the PRCA highest ups, and say, this happened, or this is how this is. Why is that so? And then I would take the answers back to the person who wanted to know. To me, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Everybody should be comfortable. That's not always the way it is. But what I learned in those meetings before and after every performance of the NFR for decades is that sometimes there are reasons that you wouldn't know for why this or that's done. And they don't always make sense, and I don't always agree with them. It's always hard for me when they hold rewrites after the rodeo in the bull riding at the NFR. That's tough. Now, I know they have their reasons for doing that. I, of course, won't leave my seat till the last bull has bucked, but the hardcore fans stay also. So there are reasons that you don't always know. And that's, I love connecting the contestants, the players with the powers that be, because sometimes what the powers that be, they seem like jerks, but sometimes the reason they do it is actually the greatest recipient of benefit is actually the players. And they may not even understand why until you connect, this is why this is done. And by the way, if it doesn't make sense and there's a better way and a better idea, I'm all for that. You are too. That's what this is all about.
That's what this podcast is all about. That's what No Spin Rodeo is all about. Communication, discussions, trying to figure out what the best path forward is. And so we've had a really good day. We appreciate all of you. I challenge all of you once again, all of you out there that download this podcast and listen, give us some feedback. Do you agree? Do you not agree with what we just talked about? We'll address it on the next No Spin. Remember that number is 817-668-2395. That's a text line nobody's name is ever seen. Or you can email us at nospinfeedback@gmail.com. We want to thank all of you for being a part. We really appreciate you downloading and listening to episode 5 of No Spin Rodeo. I want to thank Greg Teagard with Piranha Productions, our producer, for all of his great work. And my friend and co-host on this show, the amazing Kendra Santos. Thank you, Kendra. All of you have a blessed day. Pray for this world. It needs it. Until we talk again, this is No Spin Rodeo.